Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a really cool update for you from the brand Citizen. A little bit about them. They were founded back in 1918 by Japanese and Swiss investors, and they eventually settled on the name Citizen Watch Company back in around 1930. Now, the Citizen Watch Group is actually pretty large, and they do own Miyota Movements, which most people know. Well, what a lot of people don't know is that they also own Belova, Arnold & Son, Frederic Constant, Alpina, and Campanola. And one of the nice things is the Citizen brand is also still based out of Japan, and they still do make some in-house Japanese-made watches, and this is one of them. Now, they're really best known for their more affordable quartz offerings, as they really did help Seiko disrupt the Swiss watch industry during the quartz crisis, which gave birth to the Swatch Group, as they all kind of banded together. It was really a joint operation between Omega and Tissot. To save quite a few brands by consolidating, where they did their movements and a lot of their manufacturing. But with all that, I feel like the Citizen brand just doesn't get too much love. And honestly, they do have some really great models this year. I've just honestly been very lucky to find quite a few gems, and this is absolutely one of their JDM, Japanese domestic market offerings that is just really fantastic. I love this watch. At a glance, it's something where you're like, oh, that's kind of like a, Seiko Alpinist competitor, but when you get into the some of the features, you really realize that this is something very special. And although yes, it does kind of fulfill the everyday adventure watch category, it's actually really quite special. I actually purchased this from Sakura Watches for $432, and I think it's really quite a steal. This is the JDM Citizen Promaster Land AT6080-53L, and it's basically a fully loaded adventure watch, everyday adventure watch, and it's now actually cleaned up the aesthetic by having that metal tone bezel and a blue dial combination. So you've probably seen this model on YouTube before, just not in this trim, because it was actually, I'd say, pretty well popularized with the black dial option with the yellow seconds hand and a black DLC coated bezel. This is not that, and I think it's absolutely way more versatile and really handsome looking. So with all that said, let's zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. All right, guys, so as you can see, really handsome piece. Some things to really keep in mind there as the camera gets into the focus is that this is actually a fully titanium watch. It's considered their super titanium, and it has their Duratech hard coating. It's a surface treatment there, and this is just a fully brushed unit. It does have a polished button there, and then some polished accents on the screw down crown, but for the most part it's pretty much all brushed, minus this small bevel there, as you can see right there on the underside of that fixed bezel. But otherwise it's all titanium, and I'm really actually enjoying that. And a lot of it has to do with this coating. It's really nice, and you can see that it's really unmarked. This thing is pretty fantastic. Another nice feature is that it does have a screw-in case back, as you can see. Very nice there on the back side, versus some of the other similar branded Citizen, I'd say their Tough series have been those monocoque cases. Here you're getting a more traditional case back, so when it wears on the wrist, it actually wears just a bit nicer. Also, this bracelet is quite nice. I will say the end links do have a bit of play in them, as you can see here, probably just by taking a very close look. So I'd say, although bracelet wise I'd put this ahead of a similar Seiko in the same price range, end link wise a step behind, but then clasp wise a step ahead. Let's check this out, guys. They actually do have a quick adjust system there with the micro adjust, so very cool. So if your wrist swells, and it's not just something like a ratcheting wetsuit extension, this is definitely specifically made for when you're out on an adventure and your wrist actually does swell. So it gives you that you don't need a half link, because you basically have half link worth of adjustment right there, and you can do it at the push of a button, which is fantastic. Obviously here it's all milled within the folding section, which is great. Everything fits together well. It's not just also another upgrade over something like compared to the Citizen Tough Promaster line is that here the multi-piece, the multi-link setup is actually multi-links. It's not fully 3 links, as you can see. It comes across, so basically it's an H and then a piece that goes over it. So this is actually the same piece of metal within this coming over it, which does create actual definition in between there, as you can see. So you're really getting something that has a much better appearance and isn't just something where it's just kind of molded and formed to look like multi-links. And this is something that's really popular on Seikos as well, you know, especially within the higher pricing bracket. It's a trick where basically they do use 2-piece construction to make it look like a 3-piece, which works out really well. And then you can see, unfortunately though, this these end links are a 1-piece construction, so you are going to get a little bit more softness here on that end link in terms of the definition versus the end link, you know, I'm sorry, versus the bracelet link. The links themselves are pin and collar system, which work. It's definitely more of a set it and forget it type of affair here versus screws. And, you know, I have no problem with pin and collar. They work really well. And honestly, there are much more expensive watches than this. And honestly, you can actually find this for a lot more. It'll cost a couple of different vendors, but the best price from the most reliable vendor that I found was through Sakura. I've purchased quite a few watches from them. Definitely check the description for links in terms of available pieces. Now, in terms of the dimensions, this is 39.3 millimeters in diameter, and that'd be if you were to measure it from about the 2 to the 8 o'clock there. It is 11.6 millimeters thick and 45 millimeters lug to lug. And the very cool thing about this watch is that it is actually a Japanese solar quartz movement, the H100, which is also a perpetual calendar. It has a day-date complication, and it basically will run plus or minus 15 seconds a month when it's not receiving updates. So, am I receiving updates on this? I'm absolutely not. And honestly, just to get this out of the way, setting this thing is a huge pain. It is not fast. It is not intuitive. There's really not a lot of great ways to do it. I see more and more YouTube videos and people showing different things that they've done, different approaches. For me, the best thing to do was to basically download a JJY emulator to set that. So basically, you download the app to your phone, and it'll do some pulses and signals. You sit your watch next to the phone, and you know, over the course of 5 to 10 minutes, essentially it will emulate that Japanese tower radio signal and actually update your watch to your local time to match you know, the signal, which is nice. And obviously it's not like it's going to accidentally get the Japanese signal and turn to Japanese time, so you're good to go from that perspective. But I will say, if you're not down with any of that extra effort to set it, you won't enjoy this watch. It's going to be a nightmare from that perspective, unless you're fine with that extra bit of trouble to set. But once it's set, that's the nice thing, especially about quartz and about solar quartz from that perspective, is you just kind of set it and forget it. And then it's actually very, very accurate. Again, even if I decide not to update it, it's going to be plus or minus 15 seconds a month. That's not a day. That is over the course of, you know, 30 to 31 days. So in this case, it's pretty much bang on every day. I'm not plus or minus anything. I put this next to, you know, my Bluetooth powered and sunk G-Shock, and it absolutely is just every time it hits. And another nice thing is that the seconds hand hits. I mean, it just hits every little spot. This also does have different features where it can realign the hands for you, which is great. And there's definitely much better channels on YouTube that will show all of the feature sets here. I was lucky enough to kind of take advantage of all of those videos before making the decision to buy this one. But I will say that, you know, I'm probably the first one to really showcase this particular model, and the main difference is, I mean, it has all the same features, the same pros and same cons, except now you're getting it in this gorgeous colorway. I mean, that blue is fantastic. It's probably going to render a little bit brighter here on camera than it does in real life, but I will say the kind of tint of green on the Lume mixed with that very dark sedate blue, it just screams tool watch, which I really enjoy. And honestly, this thing has been a lot of fun, and I'm really a mechanical watch guy if you guys watch the channel, but something about this, I'm also a steel watch guy, so this just contradicts so many things, but I'm also somebody who can appreciate having a watch that's always ready to go. This thing is always ready to go. I can grab it, throw it on the wrist. If I'm running late, whatever, something with the kids, I can put a very cool JDM watch on. I even have it switched to the kanji day of the week there, which is great. And yeah, I really do enjoy this piece a whole lot. The dial is this really nice matte blue. It does have printed indices. Then you, of course, it's nice to have the day-date complication. You do have the white discs that are very large, another improvement over something like the Promaster Tough line. So yeah, there's a lot of nice things, and of course this proprietary Citizen Lume. I know a lot of people know there's their Lume for glowing blue. This one also glows green though, and then you're also getting 20 bar of water resistance. So again, very comparable to something like a Seiko Alpinist in terms of the size and the capabilities, except it's just going a different route in that it's being something that is you know, that takes advantage of Echo Drive, which is a huge part of what people love about Citizen. Echo Drive and titanium are really what you know, the average Citizen buyer look for. So I love that this kind of has some of those mainstream aspects, but in a case that really I think speaks to the watch enthusiast and the collector. So very cool, great size, great look, the aesthetic, the feature set, very nice. 20 millimeter lugs, so no off case size there. You can throw this thing on a NATO. It is quite thin. You know, you can throw it on a rubber strap. There's just so many options here, and I dig it a lot. So let's finish out on this bracelet. 2 millimeter taper down to 18. Of course, you do have the 3-link style, which is still a multi-link, but not a full 3-link. And then, yeah, definitely nice push button elements for the clasp here. So with all that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and see how it wears. All right, guys, as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, this thing wears fantastically. And of course, it feels great because it is titanium, guys. The clasp here is very comfortable, at least on my larger wrist. And I have to say, the wear on this, I mean, it's fantastic. I'm really digging it. I mean, this, along with my titanium full metal square virtual armor G-Shock, have really, I'd say, changed my opinion on titanium watches. Typically, I'll have a watch in titanium and kind of prefer the steel variation. These two watches, you know, I think for me anyway, just have shown how nice titanium can really be, you know, to where it is a first choice and not kind of a second choice, which is great. And I mean, I even have some nice titanium Seiko watches where I've kind of preferred the steel variation. So I think that speaks a lot to kind of how far the manufacturing has come, and I think just understanding the best way to work with these materials. Of course, I'm a big fan of titanium from kind of the EDC standpoint, big into titanium pens, flashlights, and of course knives and everything like that, which is great. But I'm really liking this one, guys. Look at that, even up close, where there's gonna be some lens distortion there, making the watch seem a little bit bigger, still really nice centered on the wrist. and then you can see it just hugs your wrist really nicely. Sure, it has male end links, but they do turn down, as you can see, really nice and really tight with those lugs in the way that they turn down. And then when you get a little bit more distance, you can see it's actually really nice. And then it's ultimately legible, very bold. You are going to get, because of that sapphire crystal, having that single dome. Basically, it looks like it's only domed on the outside, and then not domed on the other side. You're going to get some lens distortion at harsh angles, but some people kind of dig that. They, it's kind of visual interest from that standpoint. And then when you're looking at something, of course, with an analog display, especially something that is this kind of clean, crisp, and sterile, maybe it is nice to introduce a little bit of visual play there. So it's, I don't call that a huge drawback, but it could be a nitpick for some of you that are looking for, something that's going to be still very legible, even at very harsh angles. But a way to fix that is just turn your wrist so that you're not viewing it at any harsh angles. And then it does have an AR coating on the inside of the sapphire crystal. So again, titanium, coated titanium, hardened titanium, sapphire with inner AR. You're also going to get a very, set it and forget it. Of course, the set it part is a little bit tougher with this movement because it is meant to be used within the Japanese domestic market. So anywhere outside of that, where you're not going to be able to get those radio signals, it's kind of a bummer. But, of course, if this was mechanical, goodness, it would be a real dream. Maybe with like a 9000 series movement. I would probably even put it ahead of an Alpinist. In this case, because it is kind of, I'd say, more of a trade-off, because you do have to enjoy, one, quartz, and then two, the whole radio wave control and some of the limitations, depending on where you're wearing it. You can't necessarily take full advantage of it. It'd be nice if it had Bluetooth connectivity or something like that. Unfortunately, it doesn't. But for me, and then the pricing, right, under $500, it's $432 from Sakura. It's, man, I'd love just, there's a lot to like. So I find myself kind of going back and forth. And for those of you that really want something, I'd say really tough and enjoy the idea of an Alpinist, but maybe want something even a little bit more rugged and purpose built in terms of, being something really more for the adventure versus the versatility. That extra tint of versatility you can get from Seiko in the Alpinist line is nice because they do dress up really well. This is not necessarily a dress up really well type of option. This is just, hey, it's going to be used really well, and it's going to be fantastic when your wrist swells a little bit out on the trail, and you can just extend it at the push of a button. The fact that you're getting something that is really hypoallergenic, lightweight, and then of course will be charging out in the sun when you're out in the wild. I mean, that's fantastic. So really a lot to love there, but let's go ahead, get this piece off the wrist, set up for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. As you can see, really outstanding Lume there. Well applied, of course. It's not a dive watch, so you're not going to really see any Lume on that seconds hand to know that it's still running. But the fact that, essentially it is a solar quartz, you never really have to worry about the battery. I mean, as long as you are getting some sun on this piece. So, typically what I do is I'll just, once a week, I'll go leave it on the windowsill, on a weekend or something like that, on a nice clear day. But one thing I like to do is work in some low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to be, coming in out of a building, walking underneath overhangs, the shade of a tree, maybe just spending time in your favorite automobile. So it's nice to see how, one, the color palettes render in less than optimal lighting, as well as maybe getting some harsh lighting situations, high contrast, and just take a look at the way the finishing comes out. Now, as you can see, the light just glides over the brushing on those links and the case really beautifully. So you can see that this is finished to a very high level. Again, the finish is very nice. The fitment, not quite as tight as I would like to see, especially around the end link, kind of where it joins to the case. But you can see, man, that blue is fantastic. The way that it lights up and just plays with the light with that nice matte finish. You can see here it almost appears black, and then you get into it and you get those deep blues, and then maybe even some hints of some just more sporty retro kind of blue colorations. So really fantastic. I love the tone. I mean, the aesthetics of this watch, really, I think Citizen nailed it. You know, and then even something like this, their screw down crowns, the knurling on there, it's just a tactile pleasure to interact with this timepiece. And then of course it's nice on the wrist. That's another big part of it. And then you can see, yeah, again, it's not a diver, so that that lume there is starting to fade a bit, but of course it's not receiving a full charge coming off of you know, my my studio lights here. So maybe I'll give it a little, oh, that was the wrong light. Let me give it a little black light hit there so you guys can just get an idea of kind of what's loomed and what's not. So very, very handsome. Guys, I mean, I'm loving the way this thing looks, but let's go ahead and get the lights back on. Get into some closing thoughts here. All right, so for the Citizen Promaster Land, this, I love this watch. It's fantastic. And the crazy thing is, it is under 500 bucks. So I really dig that. It has all those features. It's something that I think an average kind of onlooker can appreciate just based off of the feature set and specs alone. And then it's also in a package that it speaks to the enthusiast in terms of its scale being under 40 millimeters. And then just the style, the very balanced dial, highly legible, but still, again, balanced, and visually it's a very handsome layout, which I can absolutely appreciate. On the wrist, guys, of course, like I mentioned, it wears a lot like a Seiko Alpinist, but it is thinner and lighter. It also leans more on the rugged tool watch side of the house, so it is slightly less versatile. In that it just doesn't dress up as well. So some of you are, that's great. And then if you're a big fan of Citizen, geez, I reviewed that really great piece not too long ago with that silvery, pale silver, kind of almost white dial with the newer 9000 series movement. Also, I want to say it was in the 38, 39 range. And that kind of had this everyday dressy vibe. So now you would like a two-piece collection, you can kind of do anything, considering that this just has it all covered. And then if you want to get into the mechanical side, then you have something like that also coated steel instead of titanium. So man, that would actually be a cool one. I mean, honestly, this just, I think, puts me over the edge. I need to do a kind of 2021 year in review for Citizen, because I've just picked up so many more than I ever have in any other previous years. So this has definitely been, as much as it's been a great year for Seiko, I think Citizen have really shown up and offered things that speak to the enthusiast as well as just the, you know, the more casual onlooker and appreciator of the brand name as well. So in terms of model variants, this is also available in a black coat with kind of a cream tinted lume in the AT6085-50E or Echo. So definitely check that one out. I'll put a link in the description for that as well. And there's also those kind of older model variants with the blacked out bezel layout that are still available. There's also a green, you know, which I guess was ahead of its time because this year is kind of the year of green. So if you can still find one of those are still out there as well. In terms of comparable models, again, theme and scale wise, I mean, this is just a Seiko Alpinist alternative. Some might even say it's a Seiko Alpinist killer. maybe I'll have to do a comparison, but I just have so many different Alpinists. It'd be hard to choose which one is going to be the definitive comparable. But yeah, let me know in the comments if that's something you guys want to see. And then bottom line here, guys, this is an Alpinist competitor. And yeah, I think I could see some people really gravitating towards this over an Alpinist, especially if you enjoy quartz accuracy, as well as, you know, a lightweight titanium construction. There's just a lot of tech that goes into this one. And yeah, it can be a little frustrating to set initially, but once it's set, the nice thing is you don't really have to do that again. I'll have to worry about playing with it for daylight savings, but other than that, it's pretty much going to be, you know, if I add up all the time that I spend on my automatic and mechanical timepieces, winding and setting them to the atomic time clock, this is a much smaller investment. It's just all at once, you know, 5 to 10 minutes versus just, you know, a minute or two here or there when I'm typically setting an automatic timepiece. So with all that said, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. I know this was a long video, holy smokes, but I really like this watch. It's really cool. I enjoy it, and you know, I want to share it with you guys because I think that a lot of you guys could also derive a lot of joy from handling and wearing a watch like this. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.